Hello, everyone. Just waiting a moment as people sort of file in here. I can see the attendee count ticking upwards, so I'll wait a couple of seconds before I really start the webinar. Okay, I think it's starting to slow down now. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Rachel Edgell. I am one of the college coaches in our London office, and I am joined by Lucas McAdams, who is one of the college coaches based in the US. Do you want to add anything about yourself, Lucas?
The US is a big place, Rachel. I'm over on the West
Big
Coast.
place.
We're 8 hours apart. So thank you for being up this late at night. Your dedication is always impressive to me. But I know we have a few parents joining us from kind of all over as well. East Coast, West Coast. I think we might have some in the UK with you there too. So excited to talk to everybody here today and send out this recording to anyone who doesn't get to join us live.
Great, thank you. So let me give a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. And for a bit of housekeeping as well, if you do have questions that you want to ask, if there's something that we haven't covered or something that you'd like us to go into more detail, please do use the Q&A feature of Zoom, and you can ask a question. You can ask it anonymously if you'd like, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can throughout the webinar. Basically, we wanted to be helpful for the seniors, the year 13 in the UK, the students that have just received hopefully some acceptances from universities, from colleges. So congratulations to all of you, first of all. Congratulations to your families as well. I know it's definitely a team effort. So unfortunately, though, the work's not done quite yet. So we do want to talk about some different things to think about, different things that you need to do now that you've got those acceptances in hand. So we'll talk about if you have more than one option for university, for college, and you're sort of debating which one is best for you. We'll talk about what sort of questions to ask, what sort of things to think about. What to do if you found yourself on a wait list and are hoping to figure out what to do to maybe get off of that wait list if possible. And we'll talk a bit about some important deadlines like the deposit deadline and confirming your acceptance at a university. So with
And
that
as far as
said,
the Q&A goes, I'd actually love if people, want to use that right now. You don't have to, but I'd love to just see some comments on kind of what your perspective is and honestly why you've joined today. If you're a parent or a student, what kind of questions you're hoping to get answered. Hopefully we kind of have it on the agenda, but if we don't, we'll definitely have time to answer that as we go or at the end. And even just saying like, hey, I'm here to, because my son's deciding between Boston College or Tulane, or I'm here because I'm really curious about how to handle this wait list or the housing deposit, the kind of things that right now are burning. I know this is sort of set up as like a burning question webinar, and it's helpful to hear what perspective you have. So again, like Rachel said, you can click on the Q&A and just kind of introduce yourself, or even just give us a quick line on what you're hoping to accomplish today.
Yes, that would be very helpful for us as well. And maybe there are other people in the audience who are, sort of in a similar situation. So we'll try to provide as much value as we can in the short time that we've got together. So just to sort of work through the slides as people are typing, I know some people are already sharing, so thank you. That's great. Lucas, if you want to sort of keep an eye on that,
I'll handle that.
Helpful. Thank you. So if you are a student or if you're a family whose student has multiple acceptances from universities, we want to talk about how you can sort of compare and contrast those universities in order to choose the one that's the right fit for you or for your student. So we've got just a couple of bullet points here. We'll go into a lot more detail about these, but one of the big considerations, I think, is the price. So most universities will have in their acceptance letter given a financial award if there is any, and and you should have received an indication of what tuition will actually be like. And I know that there can be a lot of confusion about that, basically, because I think universities maybe don't present it in the most straightforward way. There's lots of sort of hidden costs and things like that. So this is a really good thing to think about. If you have questions at all, definitely contact the financial aid office of the university. Ask them anything. They've had it all asked before. They're happy to help you, but really think about what's comfortable for our family, and with especially with financial awards, if you do have any, you can sometimes use those to get if you've got a financial award from one university, you can sometimes use that and sort of show another university, look, they're offering me this much. Would you be able to increase my award? Things like that. So that's a big consideration for sure.
I'll jump in on that. The award letter is something that a lot of families aren't actually expecting, depending on your financial situation and whether or not you're in need of need-based aid and stuff like that. But it's something that should have been received by everyone at this point. Maybe there's a couple schools that are still lagging behind. They don't always send them right with the acceptance, but most send them within a week or two after. So again, like Rachel said, contact the financial aid office if you haven't received that or you can't find it. It's probably in the student portal. Students should know what that is at this point, although I know organization is a challenge for some people. And then like Rachel said, I wouldn't recommend saying, hey, BC, Tufts offered me blank, like, what's up? Can you match it? You want to be a little bit more diplomatic than that. But I think it's okay to be honest and say, hey, another one of my schools gave me a really sizable merit-based award. It's going to be $15,000 a year cheaper than your school. I would ideally like to go to your school. Is there anything you can do to change my award? And in many cases, the answer might be no, but it is something we've seen repeatedly through the years colleges consider if they really want your son or daughter to attend. So that's definitely something that can help with the decision making here.
Yeah, I think there's an analogy that I've heard before, that a lot of universities all universities are either buyers or sellers of students, essentially. And so I think Lucas is exactly right, that a lot of the universities that our students apply to, they have a sizable wait list and things like that, and so they aren't probably as desperate to have you as you might be to have them. And so you do want to be quite polite in your request for financial aid if that's something you're doing. Not that they'll necessarily, nothing really, I think, bad could come of it. If you ask, as Lucas said, they will probably say no. That's the worst that could happen. But do keep in mind that you are sort of fighting a uphill battle, but it's worth a shot if that's something that's important to you.
Yeah, and we're getting a couple of questions on this, Rachel. So,
oh, sure.
I mean, I think we've kind of walked people through it at this point, but since it does seem to be really important to a couple of the parents here, just to go through this really, really clearly, I would make sure you understand exactly the award letter. This was the net price. This is the scholarship or grant. And then, this is the difference that we need to make up with cash or with loans. Especially comparing those scholarships and grants and then that net number at the bottom, one of the parents is asking about getting the private school number closer to some of the state universities here in California, which is something the private schools completely understand. And they know that, if your son or daughter is a really high caliber applicant, that they probably also applied to the UCs or to Cal Poly or San Diego State or something. And they understand that they're significantly more expensive. So again, this is not going to strike them as crazy for you to contact the financial aid office and say, this is the situation that, we're looking at paying $22,000 a year all in at Cal Poly versus, $47,000 a year here at USD. I really think USD is a better fit for my son. Is there anything you can do to get closer to that number? Because at this point, the idea of saving $100,000 over 4 years for our family is too much to be ignored. So again, you're going to go about that really respectfully. You don't need to send the actual award letter to them. In my experience, you can just tell them the situation, and that will probably get you where you're going to go. Either they're going to say, no, there's nothing we can do, all of our aid has been given out, or they'll let you know if there's a potential to basically bump up to the next level of scholarship at the private school.
And they could offer other things as well, short of sort of grants or scholarships, like some sort of work study situation where the student is expected to contribute financially during school as well. And so there's different options, but I think sort of moral of the story is it's worth asking. And there's, each university will have specific information about their university, and that's the best place to go for any of this sort of information about finances. The next two bullet points, I think in an ideal world, this would have been pretty thoroughly covered by the student during the research phase, the college list building phase. But I think sometimes, maybe we get sort of family connections or brand names, and we just apply to places and then sort of realize, oh, we don't really know that much about these places. So if that happened to you, you can certainly look at these things now, academics and extracurriculars, and just make sure, the things that you want to major in or minor in, the clubs that you want to join outside of classes, make sure that the school that you choose actually has those. You can use these to sort of compare the same major at two different universities could be approached in a different way in terms of what they focus on within the field. Or how much sort of practical or hands-on experience you might expect, or how much freedom you have to choose different courses within or outside of your major. School location and culture, same thing. Ideally, students would already have decided, oh, I really like all of these things, but maybe there's two different cultures or two different locations that they like, and now they're choosing between them. This is where you really want to try to get as much detail as you can. I did a webinar maybe a couple of months ago now that went into a lot more detail about this. So if you missed that, send me an email afterwards and I'll send you the link. But basically using the school's website to get a sense of school culture, using things like Google Maps to look around the location if you're not able to visit. I know that a lot of the sort of welcome weekends, or whatever they're called, the preview weekends, they've gone online again this year. But attending those is really helpful to get a sense of what a school has to offer. But do keep in mind that they are wooing you basically. And so it might be a little bit more rainbows than it actually would be. So, trying to figure that out as well as, okay, what would I maybe not like about this school, and just weighing those pros and cons of each is another thing to think about for choosing your university.
And I have had a lot of families visiting schools this month. Most schools are not doing organized admitted student days, like Rachel said, or even formal tours right now, but also the vast majority are not preventing anyone from coming on campus and checking things out, and even in some cases going into buildings. So obviously with the pandemic lifting a little bit, that has been a nice timing for people who are struggling to make a decision to get on some campuses and see things for themselves. Rachel, yeah, go ahead and open the decision matrix here.
Yeah, I'll see. Hopefully I can. Oh no.
And it's okay, actually, if you can't. I think
can you send the link in the chat, maybe, Lucas?
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
Right. But while Lucas is finding the link, basically we just have this. It's a Google sheet that can help quantify some of these things that students are considering about, or families considering about different universities, and it can just make for some people, this is a easier way to think about things, to sort of organize your thoughts. I can try to open that myself.
And I can actually go ahead and just share my screen for a second, Rachel.
Okay, great.
Are you seeing that?
Yes.
So, very simple sheet here, and I don't think we need to really explain how people can use this, but just really briefly, you can put in the schools here that you're considering, and then basically come up with factors like, all these different things. And then we go through this with students and have them rate each school, as well as say the importance of the different factors. And it kind of spits out a score at the end, right? And gives you a quantifiable way of deciding. Now, I actually just find this to be a really interesting exercise to do, not really like an end all be all factor. And in fact, I think I told Rachel this the other day, like I'll often do this with students and I'll be like, okay, look, so NYU scored 160 and LMU scored 140. So we're going with NYU. And then the student would be like, no, you know what? I want to go to LMU. Like
I think it's a bit like when you ask someone, which outfit do you like or whatever it is, or should I eat this or this? And they tell you their thoughts and it just reinforces what you actually thought,
Yes,
from the beginning. So it could help
exactly.
in that sense.
It's a good exercise. It doesn't have to be something that you really stick to or take too seriously. So again, we put that in the chat there, and people can use that as much or as little as they like, if that's a helpful exercise for helping choose. I'll stop sharing, Rachel, and you can go back to the slide deck.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was, I think, much easier. So now let me figure out how I reshare.
Okay. Barbara, while we are getting our act together, you asked if a decline in academic performance can result in colleges rescinding offers. The answer is yes, but it's quite unlikely. In the US, typically it would only happen with a very severe decline in academic performance. Going from A's and B's to all C's and D's or something would be an example of that. So, going from all A's to 2 A's and 4 B's, definitely a little out of character for some students, but not going to be an issue. Little different for UK schools where they offer things conditionally sometimes, but yeah, not something you probably need to worry about unless it's a really severe drop in the US.
Right, and a lot of times if there is some sort of concern related to grades from the university's perspective, they'll send a letter or an email to the counselor and sort of the school counselor and ask, what's happening and just try to get some context because they don't want to rescind their offer. So they're hoping that this isn't indicative of the students sort of, got a case of senioritis or whatever. But technically, sure, it's possible, but I don't know that I've ever seen it happen in my professional.
It's never happened to one of my kids. And okay. I've had some severe cases of senioritis.
Oh.
So probably not something you need to worry about, but feel free to email us with specifics.
Great. So the last thing on this slide is just to politely decline other universities once you have decided where you're going. This isn't necessary by any means, but I think we can all reflect back on that anxiety of waiting to get our decision and, just think there are students who are on the wait list and you sort of giving up your place earlier just gives them a chance to get off the wait list earlier. So it's a nice thing to do. It helps the universities with their planning. It helps the students on the wait list. So there may be a formal way to do this in the portal, or you could just send a quick email to the admissions office and thank them for their offer. And I don't know, I tend to add a couple of sentences about how I'm sure I would have liked it at this university, but there were a lot of factors in my decision and I chose this other university. So thank you again. And speaking of the waitlist, we get a lot of questions about this. And I think this year in particular, we saw quite an increase in waitlists really across the board, just because of the I guess, unexpected situation that we have. So I want to talk about why the waitlist exists sort of in general from a university's perspective and what they do with the waitlist. So basically what it means if you're on the waitlist yourself, and then what you could do if you're on a waitlist and sort of how to think about actions if you're on a waitlist. So just starting with the purpose of the waitlist, I think it's important to keep in mind that universities do have a business side. And so when they accept students, they recognize that some students are going to decline their offer, as we were just discussing. And so they want to accept a bit more students than they necessarily have space for, or that they necessarily think will actually matriculate at their university, in order to just offset that that those declined offers. I guess if you are on a wait list, the way to think about it is it does mean that the university liked what they saw. They would be happy to have you on campus, but they just don't necessarily have space for whatever sort of niche you fit into on campus at that moment. That could change. It could, not change. It really is a university by university basis. It would depend on things like how big the wait list is, how often they take students from the wait list. And these are things that you can look at sometimes on like the common data set. You can see how many students were on a wait list in previous years and how many were taken off that wait list, just to get an idea of what that university does with their wait list. In terms of how it's used, most universities will say they don't have any sort of ranking system, so you're not kind of front of the queue. You're not, number one in the wait list or anything like that. And really, the way they use it is that they maybe have students in different sort of, I guess, tags, for a lack of a better word. So, if I were applying as a student right now, maybe one of my tags would be UK because that's where I'm located. Another one of my tags might be volunteer because that's mostly what I do with my free time, or whatever it is. It might be French speaker. And then if there's another student who declines their offer and is in one of those sort of areas, and they're looking to kind of fill that gap, then they would take you from the wait list, or I guess, me from the wait list, versus any other student. So, in that sense, if you're on a wait list, I think we need to be quite realistic that chances are, you probably won't get off the wait list, statistically speaking. But that said, some students do at, a lot of universities get off the wait list every year. And so you want to try to put your best foot forward and do everything you can to hope that you can catch their eye. And so we've got this sample waitlist letter here that you could send via email to whoever sent you your decision. You use their name. So we've got Dear Admissions Officer name, and then just sort of fill in the blanks in terms of using the university's name, giving a little bit of background on how long you really wanted to go to that university, and explain, how they can see that this is your top choice if it is. Update them on what you've done academically and extracurricularly since you've applied. Maybe go into a bit more detail about specifically how you'll be involved at that university if they accept you, so that again, they can really see where you would fit in to the campus if they do have a gap in one of those areas. And then if this is true, if you can say this and it's true, you could let them know that you will immediately accept, or that you'd be willing to wait until the next semester, the next year to accept, whatever's true for you in terms of how you see yourself joining this university. But yeah, sorry, that was a lot. So Lucas, if you have anything that I missed, or maybe people just need to digest all of
So
that.
I would say that, well, this is not really a sample letter. I mean, this is a structure, right? And one of the questions we have in the queue right now is, do we have examples of good waitlist letters that worked? And of course we do. We have a lot of them. We're actually, I'm often sometimes a little bit hesitant to send them to students because I really want to avoid the idea that it's super plug and play and not even really about plagiarism, but this should be very specific to the student and the school and the situation. These sort of blanks here, or this like the dot dot dots and the ABCs and the XYZs should actually be quite long, unless the letter has a word count. At some schools, they will give you like a 200 word count or something. You have to be pretty efficient, but a lot of places it's open-ended, or you're just sending an email to the admissions officer like Rachel mentioned. So this should be paragraphs long. It should be really going into detail on what you've accomplished or what you've been doing in the 4 or 5 months since applying, and really going into detail on why the university is such a good fit. Specifics about programs, professors, courses, extracurriculars, the surrounding area, how it fits into your culture, your lifestyle, your family. Prove to them that when you say, I will immediately accept, there are a lot of good reasons for that. And that's the one thing I would just really emphasize here is like they're using the waitlist to fill a spot that they hoped another kid was going to accept. They really don't want to have to again fill your waitlist spot if you don't accept. So they're the biggest part of this is proving to them that you're serious and that it's your number one option. So that is the main thing I would say. In addition to, it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy 2 years of admissions. It's the hardest year ever at top schools. Ivy Leagues had 3 to 4% across the board. Pretty much every top school had a 10 to 50% increase in applications. So there's a lot of waitlist letters out there, or a lot of waitlists out there, and a lot of letters being written right now. And I am optimistic that we're going to see a lot of movement on the wait list. So that's just like the number one thing is I think this is worth it if you're really serious about a school. Like Rachel said, probably statistically it's unlikely, although some really good schools like UCSB last year accepted 95% of their kids off the wait list. I mean, that's a crazy outlier because of COVID, but we could see some really big numbers again this year. So put the work in. And then the other pending question, well, it's not really a question, it's a statement about UCSD not allowing additional information. That is true. They don't want you to do anything. That's rare. Most schools who do waitlists will accept this. They'll have a formal portal set up for you to submit it, or you can just send the email. But if you see that they don't want anything, you should respect that. It's not going to help to kind of go against that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a great question. So thank you for whoever brought that up. It's important to check what a university says about what to do on the wait list. There's usually they'll have a blog post or something on their admissions website, or you could just find it somehow on their website. But some universities will want to see additional materials besides the letter. Some will only accept a letter, and then as we just discussed, some don't want anything at all. And Lucas is exactly right. You don't sort of want to start your your waitlist conversation by already showing them that you can't follow directions. So not a great reason to have somebody pick you over someone else if that's the case. But okay. So then I think we'll sort of finish up with what to do once you've chosen your university and you've made a deposit. So I think some things to keep in mind is that the national in the US, the national deadline for responding to admissions offers is May 1st. But I think some universities they've extended that a bit individually. Just to give people some time, because I know a lot of admissions decisions were released later than normal, and so they're giving students a little bit more time to respond. But double check that, make sure you're not missing deadlines by any means. And then the deposit deadline might be around the same time. It might be later. Again, it all varies based on the exact university. So make sure you are paying close attention to those details so that you do everything sort of as they want you to do. Anything else to add before we kind of go through the bullets there, Lucas?
No, first come, first serve on some things like housing, which is the next bullet. So when you have a decision made and you're confident, it's good to go ahead and enroll. You shouldn't wait till May 1st necessarily.
Yeah, definitely. And then, once you've done that, I think, jump in and make sure that you are reading all of the emails. A lot of schools will start sending emails to your new university email address. So make sure you're checking that and not just whatever email address, your Gmail or whatever. If they're not emailing you quite yet, there may be updates in the admissions portal that you had used to see the decision and so forth. So just make sure you are aware where information is going, and then make sure you're actually reading all of that so that you don't miss something really important, like information about housing or health insurance or meal plans and so on. And most universities make this pretty straightforward. They'll give you sort of a timeline or a checklist or things like that, but just make sure you know where to look for your university. And again, if you have questions, there are people that are more than happy to help at those universities. So definitely ask them. I'm sure no question is sort of too small or too obvious. And another thing that students can do is join social media groups. So a lot of class of 25 groups will start popping up on different social media sites, and there might be sort of official groups that are recognized by the university, but that's a really nice way to meet your future classmates. I know back when I applied to college, I met one of my very first college friends on our little Facebook group, and I have a current student now who has found who she hopes will be her future roommate on a group. And so it's a fun way to just meet your classmates and ask questions that maybe people your age will have a better answer to than university staff or than your parents and so on. And then finally, if you're done with all the sort of housekeeping stuff, you can start really looking forward to the next year and researching what classes you might take, and recognizing that you might have to meet with an advisor, and maybe you won't really have as much sort of freedom as the course catalog might show. But it's fun to look and just think about all the opportunities that are waiting for you. And if you want to be really responsible, you can think about, okay, what might I major in? Is there anything I should try to tackle this first year, and so on. But yeah, there's lots to do, and it should be a really fun but busy summer for everybody.
Yeah, Rachel, I met with a student last week, and he came to the meeting with a 4-year course plan to present to me. Literally every semester for the next 4 years to graduation, what he was planning to take, which completely
it's so nice that he's so
unnecessary.
excited.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
love
really
it, of
nice.
course.
But I always say
And
I
he'll probably
started
change his
college.
mind, so.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say I started college thinking I'd be a politics major, and then ended up switching to anthropology, which I only even took because my advisor happened to be in the anthropology department and was like, oh, take anthropology 101. And so I did, because I just was from the Midwest and I didn't want to be rude. So I just did what she said. And that just evolved over the years. And I ended up taking some courses I never would have expected that I would take, because friends were in them and so forth. And so I think it's great to be excited, but definitely stay open to the different opportunities that will present themselves.
I mean, on the flip side, I was talking to a student who is finishing his freshman year at Cal Poly right now, and just hearing really kind of horror stories about how hard it is to get classes there. I think this is true for basically all public California schools and a lot of public schools in general. But if you're not totally on top of things, the minute registration opens and stuff like that, knowing what you want to take, you can get into a tough situation where nothing that you need is available. And he even got booted to becoming a part-time student for a semester because he wasn't taking the minimum requirement, even though he wanted to. Everything was full. So he wasn't as organized as he should have been. But especially at these California schools, you've got to go in there with a good plan. So that's definitely a useful thing to do over the next couple of months.
Yeah, definitely. I think it boils down to, do your research, read everything that's available to you from the universities, and start networking, and it'll help you figure all these things out for your specific university. So I think that's the end of our deck here. Yes. So if there's any sort of remaining questions, if you want to go ahead and post those now. Otherwise, if you have questions later that come up, you can always email either Lucas or myself. Our emails are just our first initial last name at esmprep.com. And I think our names are somewhere in the newsletter that you found this webinar. I guess we can put them in the chat as well.
Yeah, I think they were on that first slide, Rachel, too, if you just want to sit on that for a moment. While people are thinking about any remaining questions, I think, my final thoughts are like, again, I know this was a crazy year. I'm not sure if any of the parents who are on this call have been dealing with disappointment the last couple of weeks or frustrated students. In my experience, students who are frustrated early in April, in almost every case, are really excited by the end of April. That's not necessarily because they got off a wait list or something. That is often
Right.
because, they get over it.
Yep.
Those disappointments, like, they have great opportunities still, and they're resilient, and they're awesome, young, optimistic people, and they are excited about going to college. And so that's why I really love the social media groups and the
Mm,
going through the course guides and stuff, because it allows them to look forward and to
mhm.
not necessarily have to just look back at how difficult the last year has been, or um, any disappointment related to admissions outcomes. So that's what I would encourage people to do is, get these waitlist letters done, but also then once those are submitted and you've kind of done everything you can, start to move forward and
Mhm.
start to look forward to all the exciting things that they have ahead of them.
Yes, exactly. I think it's hard to be excited when college is sort of this like amorphous blob in the future, and you don't really, know how to envision yourself there, what you'll be doing. But the more sort of research you do, the more you start looking into all this information that the university is sending you, the more you can really picture yourself there. And I think that's when it gets much more exciting. So um, I'm excited for everybody, and we're always here if people do have questions. But it doesn't look like there's any lingering questions in the Q&A. So I think I will let everyone get on with their day, their evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful. I'm glad we could answer some questions. And as I said, we're always here. So please do send us questions if there's anything that comes up later.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Lucas.
Have a great day, everybody.